president of the United States can openly talk about God.
Right.
And no one goes, what is God? What are you saying? Like, what are you saying? Do you think Jesus came back from the dead? What do you think?
It's undeniable that crossing lines can lead to unexpected results, whether you agree with theory or not. There are many examples in history of people who disrespected God in fun or without meaning to and got in trouble for it. These kinds of situations are stark reminders that playing with attack is dangerous and shouldn't be taken lightly. Come with us as we look at 14 examples of people who tried to make fun of the divine and quickly realized they were wrong. Number 1. Logan Paul. As an up-and-coming internet star, Logan Paul has been involved in a number of controversies over the years, which have led to heated arguments in online groups. An argument about Jesus on a podcast with George Jenko, on the other hand, stands out. Paul boldly yelled, "F Jesus," at a time when many people were angry, which was a comment that many people rightly regretted. Paul, on the other hand, seems to have gotten a quick dose of fast feedback. Several weeks after making the controversial comment, he told the truth in a video that his words had hurt him. Paul talked about a string of bad luck that seemed to follow him around like it was snowballs, calling those weeks the hardest of his life. This made him think again about what he had said. As Paul dealt with the repercussions of his actions during this rough time in Qatar, he thought deeply about how hurtful his words were. It was a rare moment of honesty when Paul admitted he had done wrong. He will always be remembered as one of the few people who quickly faced the consequences of insulting God. When it comes to social media effect, it's a powerful reminder of how words can hurt and how important it is to have thoughtful conversations. Number 2. Conor McGregor. Irish professional fighter and mixed martial artist Conor McGregor has gotten a lot of attention for being rude and sure of himself. However, McGregor's casual approach toward the idea of God in an interview with TMZ caused a stir. When asked about how he would do in a fight with Jesus, McGregor gave an answer that shocked and disgusted many. People thought it was very rude and condescending of him to say, "There's not a man alive that can beat me," and to say that Jesus was dead, even though he meant it in a funny way. There was something bad in store for McGregor, it looks like. In his next fight against Nate Diaz, McGregor lost badly, which was a stark warning that there are people who are better than him in combat. McGregor's humiliating loss showed him what happens when you're full of yourself, and it taught him that even jokes can have consequences. By some strange turn of events, McGregor had to face the fact that his bluster had been exposed by a strong opponent, which made him take back what he had said. Number 3. XXXTentacion. Even though he wasn't religious, famous artist XXXTentacion believed in a higher power that made everything. Song titles like "Who the F is God" and "God's Purpose," which question traditional religious views, show that he didn't like organized religion. A controversial comment from XXXTentacion in an interview was, "All of these people will be worshiping me if I don't die in a year. My prayer is that I will not die." This blasphemous statement turned out to be sadly true, as he died just a year later. He said something very ironic, which is a powerful warning of how unpredictable life is and what happens when you are too proud of yourself. XXXTentacion's untimely death shows how short life is and how even the bravest statements can be trumped by the realization that we will all die. Number 4. Lady Gaga. Grammy-winning singer, songwriter, and actress. Lady Gaga is adored for her daring style, strong vocals, and public character. She has constantly questioned societal norms and fought for diversity and inclusion throughout her career. But her artist statements that are meant to be offensive have also made her a controversial figure. Music with evil and satanic themes like Judas has caused debate and criticism. Lady Gaga had a strange and obviously symbolic experience during one performance of this kind of song. Unexpectedly, some equipment fell on her head while she was singing on stage. Others thought that the time of this event was too odd to be random, suggesting that it might have been a result of karma. Individuals have different ideas about what happened, but the event serves as a lesson of how complicated fate and coincidence can be. Lady Gaga's emotionally charged performances and contentious themes continue to cause discussion and make people think about how art, symbols, and beliefs all connect. Number 5. Thomas Andrews. The Titanic which is probably the most famous ship in history, was built under the direction of Thomas Andrews. He was a key part of the design team for the Titanic as the managing director and head of the drawing department at Harland and Wolff in Belfast, Ireland. When Andrews told a friend that the Titanic was as close to perfect as human ingenuity could get, he was clearly very involved in the project. What has stuck out through the years, though, is another comment that is said to have been made by Andrews. He is said to have said, "Not even God can sink this ship," with complete certainty. He spoke these brave words out of arrogance, but they would come back to haunt him in a terrible way. It was Andrews and 1,500 other people who died when an iceberg broke the Titanic's myth of being unbeatable. One single iceberg put an end to his boast, which was a cruel twist of fate that served as a moving reminder of how arrogant people can be when faced with nature's fury. Number 6, Tancredo Neves. An important Brazilian politician, lawyer, and businessman, Tancredo Neves held many important government jobs, such as Minister of Justice and Internal Affairs, and in 1962, Minister of Finance. Between 1961 and 1962, he was president of the Council of Ministers. But Neves said something brave while he was running for president in 1985. He said that if his party gave him 500,000 votes, no one, not even God, could remove him from office. Like the Titanic's foolish brag, Neves's sure comment would turn out to be very bad. Even though the goal number of votes was reached, bad luck struck. Sad to say, Neves died on April 21st, 1985, from problems that started after surgery on his intestines. Because he died too soon, he never got to become Brazil's first citizen leader in more than 20 years. At age 75, Neves was so close to reaching his long-held goal that it hurt, but he would not live to see it come true. A lot of people think that Neves's death right before taking office was a punishment for the brave challenge he made to divine power during his campaign. It serves as a sobering warning of how dangerous human ambition can be and how weak mortal power is when it comes to cosmic forces. Number 7, Heather McDonald. The story of comedian Heather McDonald is a stark warning of how important it is to be sensitive and respectful, even in the entertainment world, and especially when talking about faith and belief. McDonald is a famous American stand-up comedian, actress, and author. She was born in June 1970 and is best known for her roles on the E-series Chelsea Lately as one of 8 writers. On the other hand, McDonald's stand-up special turned dark when she tried to make fun of Jesus. People thought she was insulting and offensive when she said, "Clearly, Jesus loves me the most," in a tone that was caught on video, since she is known to be skeptical about religion. In a shocking turn of events, McDonald seems to lose her balance right after saying those words, stumbling back and falling dramatically on stage, breaking her skull in the process. After that, she was taken to the hospital. When McDonald thought about what happened later, he was hesitant and nervous, and he admitted what happened in a show. But her unsure mood didn't change the minds of people who thought she had been punished fairly for insulting God. There is one truth that can't be argued with. McDonald said she was sorry for what she did that terrible day. It's a powerful lesson of what can happen when you speak without thinking and how important it is to communicate with care, even when you just want to laugh. Number 8, Marilyn Monroe. American actor and model Marilyn Monroe, whose real name was Norma Jean Mortensen, was famous for playing the perfect blonde bombshell in comedic roles. She became famous as a symbol of the sexual revolution in the 1950s and 1960s, and her brilliance and beauty captivated people. Over a 10-year period, she played lead parts in movies that made $200 million, which is a huge amount of money, equivalent to about $2 billion today. Despite being a famous person, Monroe didn't follow traditional religious views. She clearly disliked organized religion when she called herself a Jewish atheist. Jessica's friend Jean Carmen confirmed this by saying that they had never talked about religion. Speaking on a call-in show, James Bacon, who was believed to be dating Monroe, confirmed this by pointing out that she wasn't at church. Monroe stayed firm in her beliefs during a famous meeting with evangelist Billy Graham. Graham told her that the Spirit of God had sent him to speak to her, but she proudly said, "I don't need your Jesus." Monroe was tragically found dead in her room a week later, likely from an overdose. Her dislike of organized religion and the events leading up to her death are still mysteries, but people are interested in thinking about what happened. Number 9. Brazil parades. People all over the world know that Brazil loves big, fancy parties and parades. But one parade in 2019 caused a lot of anger because of its controversial show. People watching saw people dressed as Satan, viciously beating and pulling a picture of Jesus, while others cheered happily. This blatant insult not only hurt Christianity, but it also hurt a religious person who is respected by many. To make things worse, a float in 2023 showed rude pictures of a huge doll meant to look like the devil. Many people saw these shows as blasphemous insults that should lead to punishment from God. Brazil had its wettest month ever in February 2023, which caused a lot of damage along the northern coast of the state of São Paulo. There were landslides, floods, and a high number of deaths, marking a terrible time in the history of the area. These deaths are made even more painful by the examples set by past disasters. For example, in the summer of 2020, Brazil broke its own record for the most rain in a single day, with up to 320 mm of rain. Even though these natural disasters have caused a lot of damage, some people still think that the parade's disrespect for God was what set them off. It's a sobering reminder of what could happen if you don't respect deeply held religious views. Number 10. The First Congregational Church in Spencer, UCC. On June 2nd, 2023, lightning hit and then burned down the First Congregational Church of Spencer in Massachusetts. It was a terrible blow. This horrible event happened while the church publicly supported LGBTQ+ rights and spoke out against traditional biblical beliefs, as shown by their Facebook page. A lot of people think that the fire was a message from God or a greater power telling them they were doing something wrong. This meaning comes from the idea that disobeying religion teachings and doctrines will lead to consequences, sometimes in strange ways. Sometimes making fun of religion and God might not be seen or even be liked, but events like these are a stark warning that disrespect rarely goes unpunished. Karma is the idea that what you do will always have results, whether they happen naturally or because of something supernatural. Finally, these events teach us a very important lesson. Not respecting our strong views and values can come back to haunt us in strange ways. It serves as a sobering warning to be careful and think about how our words and actions might affect others. Number 11. Christopher Hitchens. Christopher Hitchens was born and raised in Britain, where he became famous for his writing. He is an author, writer, and teacher. In the 1970s, Hitchens graduated from Oxford University with degrees in philosophy, politics, and economics. He then began a long and successful career as an author, writing 18 books about religion, society, politics, and literature. Hitchens was a vocal foe of religion. He called himself an anti-theist and famously called one of his books, God is Not Great. He was adamant that all faiths were dangerous, oppressive, and flawed at their core. He fought his whole life for the ideas that religious doctrine was less important than free speech, scientific research, and the separation of church and state. Hitchens worked hard to discredit the arguments for God's presence by using facts and logic. He constantly questioned religious beliefs and practices, but his fight against religion took a sad turn in June 2010 when he was in New York to promote his autobiography. After having a severe effusion, Hitchens was taken to the emergency room. He later told the public that he was getting treatment for esophageal cancer. It seemed like a strange turn of events for many that the man who spent his whole life arguing against God would be diagnosed with throat cancer. Hitchens' health got worse over time, and he spent the last few years of his life with a body that was weak from illness. He finally died of pneumonia on December 15, 2011, leaving behind a complicated legacy that continues to make people think and argue about how faith, death, and life itself fit together. Number 12. Madalyn Murray O'Hair. Madalyn Murray O'Hair was a campaigner and strong supporter of atheism in the United States. She agreed with Christopher Hitchens on many points. She started the group American Atheists in 1963 and was its president until 1986, when her son John G. took over. She was against religious beliefs and wanted church and state to be kept separate. O'Hare also put together the first issues of the American Atheist magazine, which made her an even more important figure in the fight against religion. As someone who called herself a militant woman, O'Hare never hid the fact that she didn't like religion. She became famous for playing a key part in the famous Murray versus Klett case. This lawsuit successfully fought the policy of required prayer and Bible reading in Baltimore public schools, and in 1963, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled in her favor. Because of this win, people called her the most hated woman in America. O'Hare was known for not giving in on religious issues. She often made fun of religious figures like Jesus, which showed how committed she was to atheism. By a strange turn of events, her son later became a preacher, even though O'Hare and her family were strict atheists. Sad to say, O'Hare, her son, and her niece all went missing in 1995 for unknown reasons. It wasn't until 2001 that their bodies were found, which proved that they had been killed. The shocking end to O'Hare's life is a depressing reminder of how complicated and harmful ideologies can be, even when people don't believe in God. Number 13, Bon Scott. The famous hard rock band AC/DC made Bon Scott famous as their second lead singer and poet. He is an Australian singer and songwriter. Aside from not being very religious, Scott got caught in the middle of religious feelings because of his song Highway to Hell. The main track of AC/DC's first big hit, Highway to Hell, became a huge hit, selling over 1 million copies and making the band famous all over the world, especially in the United States. But the song also caused a lot of trouble because of what some people saw as satanic imagery and sexually suggestive words. Several listeners didn't agree with what they saw as praising Satanism and being against God and faith. Scott's unexpected death in February 1980, which was caused by choking on his own vomit, led to rumors that it was divine punishment. Some Christians saw his death as a sign of God's anger, seeing it as punishment for his connection to the controversial song and what they saw as its anti-religious themes. Even though Highway to Hell and Scott's other gifts to rock music will live on, his death brought to light the troubled places where music, religion, and cultural interpretation meet. This piece of art reminds us of the power of art to stir up arguments that last for a long time. Number 14, John Lennon. John Lennon is one of the most famous people of the 20th century and has had a lasting effect on the world. His name alone brings to mind a heritage that goes beyond space and time. He was an artist who did many things, but one of the most important things he did was help start the famous and loved band The Beatles. Lennon rose to fame as a member of one of the most important singing groups of all time. He was born in 1940 in Liverpool, England. Even though Lennon was enjoying the glory of his huge fame and the love of people all over the world, his relationship with the idea of God was complicated. Many people believe that their good luck and successes are due to a higher power, but Lennon never believed that a higher power had any control over his life. Even though he grew up in a religious Christian family and went to Sunday Mass every week, he became a strong atheist who didn't trust organized religion. It's possible that his doubts fed his desire to say things that would cause trouble. When Lennon said in March 1966 that the Beatles were more popular than Jesus, it caused a huge stir. His statement was printed in the London newspaper, The Evening Standard. He said that people's love for the band was stronger than their faith in Christianity, and that the rise of rock music showed a loss of religious zeal. When Lennon's statement was first released, it didn't get much attention, but when it was republished in the US, it caused a huge stir. Evangelical Christian groups were furious because they thought what he said was blasphemous and hurtful. The riots and backlash that followed showed how words can hurt and divide people, and they left a permanent mark on Lennon's troubled relationship with faith and fame. As a result of Lennon's comments, there were a lot of protests and threats, especially in the Southern Bible Belt, which is a very conservative part of the United States. People saw what he said as a direct challenge to God, which led to record stores being burned, press interviews being canceled, and even some radio stations permanently banning the Beatles' music. During the same year that they were planning a tour of the United States, the controversy threw a dark cloud over their plans and delayed the release of their most recent record, Revolver. During the uproar, Lennon was at a crossroads, trying to figure out what to do about the effects of his words that he hadn't meant. Later, he said that he didn't mean to compare the band to Jesus Christ, but the damage was already done. The fuss not only hurt their image, but it also meant they could no longer go on tour. Even though the band tried to fix their image, Lennon was told not to go on tour during his solo business. This was a sobering reminder of how his controversial statement would affect people for a long time. Unfortunately, Lennon's profanity had effects that went beyond just being controversial. Mark David Chapman, one of his fans, killed him in a terrible way in 1980. In a shocking turn of events, Chapman said that Lennon's controversial comment about Jesus was one of the reasons he did what he did. This sad poem is about the power of words and the bad things that can happen when you don't mean to. It's a stark reminder of how short fame is and how heavy guilt can be. Thanks for seeing this.